Thoughtful Christians have raised questions about the resurrection from the very beginning. You can see that in the lesson that was read to us this morning from the Gospel of John. It's the famous scene of Thomas, seen with his own eyes, the evidence of the resurrection. Thomas was not present the first time that Jesus appeared to the disciples in the upper room, and because he hadn't been there when they told him about it, he doubted it. He said, I won't believe it until I can see the print of the nails in his hands and put my hand on them. In our lesson for this morning, that happens. Jesus appears a second time to the disciples. Thomas is there. Jesus singles out Thomas and says, put your fingers here. See for yourself. Don't be faithless, but be believing. Thomas replied, my Lord and my God. Then comes the punchline. Jesus says to Thomas, have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe. That's addressed to you and to me, for we will not see the bodily presence of Jesus. But Jesus says there's a special blessing for those who do not see and yet believe. According to the other Gospels, the doubting was not limited to Thomas. It was a problem right from the beginning. Matthew says that when Mary Magdalene tells the disciples he's risen, Matthew says some doubted. And Luke, when Jesus appeared to the disciples, said some disbelieved for joy, whatever that means. I think it means they thought it was too good to be true. Because if Jesus is resurrected, then love is stronger than hate. Excuse me. If Jesus is resurrected, good is stronger than evil. If Jesus is resurrected, life is much greater than we ever imagined. If Jesus is resurrected, then God has the final word after all. This is exactly what the disciples had trouble believing. We have trouble believing it too, especially if we're called upon to live our lives based on that faith. They had just seen the most precious, the most wonderful thing that this world's ever known, crucified, eliminated, murdered as a nuisance. They believed that he was the one who was going to redeem the world. They believed that he was the Messiah. That's what Messiah means, that he's going to be the one to restore the world to the way that God intended it. He talked about a world of love, a world of peace and justice and mercy. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a Baptist or a Methodist, Hindu, Muslim, Jew, or atheist. We all share a common humanity. And all of us who share this common humanity have the same dream, the dream of a world where things come out right, where everyone gets the mercy and the justice they deserve, and the innocent no longer have to bear the consequences of someone else's greed or sin, and where good people don't have to suffer. We dream of a world of equality, where everyone is treated as a child of God with dignity and respect. We dream of that. All of us do. All humanity does. We long for a world where love rules the relationships between people. Well, there will be forgiveness and reconciliation and peace, and no more war, and no more violence. This is what we dream of. Imagine John Lennon's day. This is what Jesus taught, what he embodied in his own life. When he was here on earth, the world was somehow different. When he was here, God's light and love were clearer. When he was here, the dreams and visions of a new world became believable. In fact, the disciples saw it. They saw God's reign manifested where Jesus was. They saw Jesus bringing justice into the world. He made some things come out right. He healed the sick. He raised people from the dead. With Jesus, there were happy endings. Tragedy was eliminated. They witnessed him treat everyone as significant, no matter who they were, Jesus treated them as if they were the most important person in the world. And Jesus forgave people. He forgave everyone, and so freed everyone. Freed from the oppression of guilt, from the condemnation that other people had placed upon them. And he empowered them. That's what grace does. Grace empowers you to become the person that you're supposed to be, the person that God created you to be. Through the grace of forgiveness, we can get rid of the past and move out into the future that is waiting for us. We are free when we are forgiven. Jesus forgave everybody. He gave everybody a whole new start in this world. And most crucial and amazing of all, he said, this is what God is all about. God is about freeing. God is about redeeming, recreating the world. God is like Jesus. That's what they believed. Jesus himself said in the Gospel of John, if you've seen me, then you have seen the Father. Paul, when he wrote to his friends in Corinth, said, God was in Christ reconciling the world to the divine self. And that especially is what made it so hard. They believed that. They believed that the kingdom had finally come and that God was with us and the world was at last redeemed. And then it happened. The powers of this world were challenged and threatened by his preaching, because his preaching meant that we all had to change. And if we're going to live according to his preaching, then the world is going to have to change. It's going to have to change drastically if God is here. So they arrested him, humiliated him, crucified him, and he died. And that was the end of it. So the disciples, despondent in despair, as only those who have hopes so much can be in despair. Madeleine L'Engle captured something of that when she wrote about what happened one summer. She and her husband lived in New York City, in Manhattan, where violence was a part of their everyday life and where they had to live defensively. They had a retreat in upstate New York in the Catskills. They'd go up there on the weekend, spend time there in the summer. They called it Crosswicks. When they retreated to Crosswicks, she wrote, they entered into a different kind of world, a world of peace, of safety, away from the violence of this world, a world of natural beauty, serenity, and peace, away from all the ugliness and the dissidence of the world. Their daughter had given them an icon for Christmas. The icon was a picture of Mary and the baby Jesus. L'Engle loved it. She said it was just perfect for Crosswicks. She took it to Crosswicks, put it up on a tree by the stream where she would sit and meditate and pray. That summer ended. They closed up the cabin and returned to the city. The next spring, they opened up the cabin. As soon as possible, Madeleine L'Engle went down to the special sanctuary by the stream. As she approached it, she saw a terrible sight. Someone at close range had shot the icon. It was shattered into pieces, the pieces lying on the ground. She picked up one of the pieces. It had the face of the baby Jesus on it. The bullet went right into the head of the baby Jesus. Whoever did this aimed the gun at Jesus. There's so much greater crimes than crimes, vandalism. But she wrote that for her, it was the embodiment of what evil does. It invades our lives, it destroys that which is precious to us. And it is anonymous and silent and invisible. It just strikes out, and it makes us all feel hopeless and helpless. That there is nothing that we can do to protect ourselves, and especially nothing we can do to protect those who are precious to us. You all know the horror story of Emmett Till's torture and murder in Glendora, Mississippi in 1955, when he was just 14, being falsely accused of flirting with a white woman. The marker that memorializes Till has been stolen, thrown in the river, replaced, shot, replaced again, shot again, defaced with acid, and had KKK sprayed on it. The vandalism has been targeted and persistent, shot up so many times the state has now erected a bulletproof sign. We'll see if that's really possible. Google Emmett Till sign and you will find multiple images of white people posing in front of the sign, shot up, posing with their guns. Till would have been 80, by the way, and his killers were never convicted. The crucifixion of Jesus was such a moment for the disciples. It affected them the same way that the violence to this sacred space had affected Madeleine L'Engle. It meant to them that now that there was no escape, no area, no place in this world unaffected by evil. Evil had appeared to be victorious, omnipotent. Any effort against it would be futile. In the end, they thought, evil is going to win. Carrie Bauman shared Clint Smith's poem last Friday. When I hear people say that we've been through worse, all I hear is the wind slapping against the gravestones of those who did not make it, those who did not survive to see the confetti fall from the sky, those who did not live to watch the parade roll down the street. I've grown accustomed to a lifetime of aphorisms meant to assuage my fears, pithy sayings meant to convey that everything ends up fine in the end. There's no solace in rearranging language to make a different word tell the same lie. Sometimes the moral arc of the universe does not bend in a direction that will comfort us. Sometimes it bends in ways that we don't expect, and there are people who fall off in the process. Please, dear reader, do not say that I am hopeless. I believe there is a better future to fight for. I simply accept the possibility that I may not live to see it. I have grown weary of telling myself lies that I might one day begin to believe. We are not all left standing after the war has ended. Some of us have become ghosts by the time the dust has settled. So what's the use? What's the use of hoping? What's the use of trying? What's the use of working so hard for things that matter, for peace and justice and righteousness, and things that can make human life and worthwhile, things that are so fragile, so vulnerable, that they can just be eliminated? Well, then came the resurrection. And Thomas doubted because he hadn't seen, and Matthew said some doubted. Luke says some saw and they disbelieved for joy because it was too good to be true. The resurrection meant that evil is not in control of this life. God is over all. The resurrection meant that good will eventually triumph in this world. It meant that love was more powerful than hate. It meant that God's purpose to redeem the creation, including all of us, is going to happen. Not even death can stop God's life for us now. That's what belief in the resurrection really meant. It was not just an empty tomb. The resurrection was the recreation of the world. It is possible now to hope and to dream and to work for good in this world, for equality and for peace. It meant that those things that Jesus was about are the things that God is about. So that the things that Jesus stood for are the things that are going to win in this world. It's what you're asked to believe when you believe in the resurrection of Jesus. Madeleine L'Engle describes it again. She said that it was a while before she could return to that quiet spot where the icon had been destroyed. But when she did, she discovered something quite wonderful. The tree that had held the icon had absorbed the wound and continued to grow. Could hardly see where the gunshot had gone. She wrote this: I now affirm my faith in the promise of the resurrection, not only of Jesus Christ, but of all of us, not as a panacea or a placebo, but as the reality that lights the day. I believe that God will not create creatures able to ask questions only to be snuffed out before they can answer them. The joyful God of love who shouts galaxies into existence is not going to abandon one iota of creation. So the icon tree for me is a symbol of God's concern forever and always, ages unto ages, for all of us, every single one of us, no matter what we think or believe or deny. That is what we are called to believe when we believe in the resurrection of Jesus. There isn't anything that can defeat God's purposes for us now, not even death. We are called to believe that the stage on which the drama of our life is being played out is much grander than we ever imagined. Actually, I don't think this takes a whole lot of faith. Who would ever imagine the life that we're living now would be like this? And if it is like this, if there is life now, then why not again? Do you really believe that this is all there is? It's only what you see? Or even more ludicrous, do you believe only what you can grasp and understand with your brain, that is the only thing that is real? Blessed are those who have seen, who have not seen, and yet believe. Amen.